Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and well zooming. Sorry we're a little bit behind schedule. I'm sure you've been very calm anyway. It's probably your practice already started. It's very good. Thank you very much. So welcome to the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra. So we are holding our sessions here at our center in Holder in person. So thank you for all of you here in person and those of you there in person. So we are all in person. We never not in person. Not truly though, but relatively all here together. Thank you very much. Our practice of the morning will start with a short prayer that you have a text before you, or we can do the screen sharing for those who are in person over there. Idea is to gather your thoughts and your attention and to sit still. And most importantly, intention, not just for today, not just for me, not just for the body or comfort of it, but for the altruistic purposes of our well-being of mind and our ability to be kind to others and be of benefit to others. If we are present, we will be a present to others. When we are not so present, we are not even doing things that are good for us or now, let alone later. But through meditation, we can become more present and more apt and useful. And for this reason, meditation offers small enlightenment in your everyday, how to be present. In your thoughts, in your deeds, in your feelings. When you're present, you can shift your feelings. When you're not, you get drowned in them. So that's why it's very good to have an intention how to do this for long-term purposes and selfless purposes to others as well as yours. So to remind us to do that, we will do these prayers we call refuge in traditional Buddhism. Refuge means safety. We are safe when we are present, and we are not, we are absent. So when we think of the Buddha and his infinite wisdom and qualities and practice how he attained enlightenment, we become inspired. And so therefore we honor the Buddha and his teachings and the living Sangha fellowship. And so we do that, and plus the relevant four immeasurable prayers. And after that we will do the meditation, which I will guide you in short 3 slots of 10 minutes, and followed by the talk. So thank you, everybody. Oyenda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aitere Future Dharma by virtue Ajivendala Ajare Buddha Duve and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajare Vijayalajama Vajja Ajivendala Ajare Buddha Duve and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajare Vijayalajama Vajja Ajivendala Ajare Buddha Duve. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know our power from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have become cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they know apart from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So I'll lead you a few moments before each of the 3 10-minute sessions. Primarily, you have to observe 4S. First is stillness, sitting in a very good, correct posture, not move, and sit still. And your attention also has to be very still and present. That's the physical effort. Second S is sincerity. You have to have sincere, altruistic motivation, not just for the temporary comfort or feel good quickly in meditation, that kind of new age kind of expectation. This is not. This is to sincerely to be present so that we can be useful to serve others and be kind to ourselves and others by having mindfulness. So therefore do the practice sincerely for altruistic and insightful purposes. Third S is your attention should be serene, shouldn't be sluggish, scattered, or dull and sinking, but rather very serene. Your attention should be very serene. The fourth S is simplicity. You don't make it too complicated. Just learn to sit still. And in this particular first part, we are just doing that. Just scan your posture. Make sure your hands is on the lap. 2 thumbs below the navels joining. Your elbows, shoulders balance. Not move the hands at all, let alone any parts of the body, because the head comes to become synchronized. The whole body is still. The back, the legs, the hands, the shoulders, straightening your back. Your chin slightly tucked in. Eyes not blinking, not widely open, nor tightly shut. Just soft, gaze straight to the tip of your nose, on the floor in front. Have a sense of a single hair pulls you towards the ceiling. In this way, you slowly scan your posture mindfully in ascending order, and then gradually reverse the scanning downwards from the crown to the temple of your forehead. Your lips and teeth relax, as are the jaw. Tongue slightly curl inside the upper teeth to avoid dryness and wetness. Chin slightly tucked in, shoulders balanced. Keep the spine straight. And your thumbs touching just below the navel. And in this way, you scan up and down in a skillful manner, about 6 to 8 rounds. During that bout of effort, don't compromise. Keep still, and sincere, serene, and simple. After every bout of effort, take a short, useful mini break so that you are not over-applying yourself to the extent of becoming stiff or rigid. Just notice where you need to relax as you scan up and down. In this way, remain one-pointed calm. Hold this vigil for the benefit of all, with everybody sitting with you. Just be patient. Even if little pin and needles, numbness, pain registers, just forbear them. These too will pass. I shall remain strong. With this attitude, sit still, serene, simple, sincere motivation. With clear, conscious attention, all focus on your posture, not anywhere else. Maintaining your 4S, the stillness of the posture, sincere, serene, and simple in being here. Now, during the second 10 minutes, you will observe all of that, but your primary attention should focus on your breath. So you inhale. When you're inhaling, consciously inhale. Delegate the inhalation to bring positive things in the world with the oxygen, and you feel inspired. And thus stay fully present with the inhalation. Then as you permeate the oxygen in the lung, consciously spread it and flood your whole 72,000 channels and nervous system. You see it pulsating, flooding your whole intravenously. You feel restored, recharged, rejuvenated. The blood cells all renewed and feel re-energized. Stay present with the permeation. And then as you exhale, consciously stay with the outgoing breath as you release the carbon, release sadness, hurt, pain, laziness, or whatever it is. Just let it go and feel your relief. In this way, stay fully present and serene with your attention with each round of breath. And here you will do counting forward. Each time you finish the exhalation, you mentally count that as 1, and do the next one as just as meticulously as the first one. When you finish the exhalation, mentally count it as 2. So therefore you stay with the mindfulness of doing, knowing, seeing and feeling the inhalation, likewise the permeation, and likewise the exhalation. When you do 1 careful qualified round of breath, then you count forward 3, 4, 5, unless you notice you have lost the count. If you lost the count, take a conscious mini break. That's perfectly fine, and then start again from 1. But if you succeed to keep counting without losing the count, just stay in that very mindfulness to do each round just as carefully and learning to increase the counting forward as high a number that the time permits. But during this, you observe all the 4 S's. Physically, the stillness. Emotionally, the sincerity. Attentively, the serene attention. And technique, very simple. Keeping those very techniques, attitudes, attention, and physical posture. Now we will do the last 10 minutes meditation. During this, your technique is to do the same rounds of breath, but you do reverse counting. If you reach 40, like I did, you can now count reverse. First one is 40 when you finish exhalation. Second is 39, and then 38. So you stay very one-pointed, not lose the count, and keep your attention very serene so that your mindfulness, calmness will allow you to stay fully present to do reverse counting of the qualified round of breathing. So that's our meditation. How was your meditation? Painful? Very good. Okay, now we'll do the short prayer before the teaching as a formality. So once again, welcome everyone. Thank you for your discipline and for coming here. Maybe some of you are first time here. Others are not. Please, you're welcome. On Sundays, we have this open, and there, of course, we do other sessions as well. If you are not on our mailing list, then you can put your name and phone number. You will be informed. Probably you already are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So this morning's talk is really looking at Buddhism and its association and importance of monasticism. More, I think, talking about how monasticism played a very significant role in developing and enshrining Buddhism, and maybe even after 25 centuries later, it still has some role. But how significant that role is, how carefully that monasticism is preserved and can be preserved is a very important question. First, we have to know the Buddhism distinct from Christianity, because Christianity also has monasticism practices of being very strict and very much, but I think the people who practice that is so few. But in terms of Buddhism, the number of people in robes are so many, you have good reason to believe there is monasticism. So, but we can see whether pure monasticism is kept intact or not. Because if you look at the word monasticism, it correlates to asceticism, So you have to basically choose an ascetic life. You have to give up everything and live a very simple life, And as far as the Pali, the Theravada traditions go, who has a relatively much stronger form of monastic discipline, the Vinaya. They are mainly known for that, but they are really respected for that. So they talk about 13 types of ascetic practices. If you observe all the 13 types of ascetic practices, then you are a monastic. But word monastic, if it really means, is the person who lives in seclusion, not in towns, cities, units, homes, and condomines. No, not in big compounds with many others. It has to be solitary. It has to be solitary huts on your own, far away. That is very remote, and that's why Buddha himself, the Buddhism really started from Shakyamuni Buddha's promise, a vow to live a monastic life. He left palace. That was not a place for monastic to live. It wasn't convenient. So he escaped. He just basically escaped, comfort. He escaped company. He escaped pleasure and duties and responsibilities. Basically, monastic is one who desert the worldly life. One renounce the worldly life and therefore live outside the world. It's completely anti-society, basically. Monasticism is anti-socialism, anti-society. From the it's not negatively speaking, positively speaking. One who give up food, one who give up, for instance, they talk about 13 ascetic practices. Buddha himself observed all of these. We can rejoicingly think how Buddha attained enlightenment through asceticism. Buddha did not parachute it, those people, those Australian electric election talking about parachuting ones. Those parachute people don't last long. Buddha start from scratch, So he struggled, practiced, gave up everything. He didn't become a descended god. He was prince. He had everything. But he gave up everything, seeing those as a very hindrance for your spiritual development. He saw them as a trap, an imprisonment, and a cause of conflict, cause of jealousy. And so therefore he renounced them as poisons, So therefore in Buddhism we don't say Buddha is son of God. Buddha was a human being, who had everything what a human being can. How many can become a king? Not even 10. Only one can become a king. Even brothers fight for each other and stab each other to just the king. It's that bad a position. It is a dirty position, but most people want that position. But he did not enjoy it. He wanted to get out of that shackle. Yeah? So therefore, Buddhism itself came from Buddha's noble example of being able to give up all the things that everybody was craving to get. He was born in silver spoon. But he didn't want to indulge in those things, saying those things temporarily comfort, maybe position, possessions and company and status, wealth, everything is what most people seem to look for. But he realized this still impeded one's true spiritual growth and one's usefulness. And hence it came on him that he needs to do a drastic
shift.
And so he chose to live a life of mendicant. These are 13 things, 13 things what he did. He abandoned his beautiful royal clothing. Royal clothing. This talking about not just clothing, the hairdo, the nail do, all the pedicures, all the manicures. I'm sure they had their own brand those days. He just threw them away, and he just donned on, and then he donned on. Instead of that, he donned on 3 Dharma robes. 3 just permitted robes for the monastic. So he gave up all the other apparels and the dresses and crowns and jewelries and everything. So no jewelries. And so abandoning the jewelries and clothing, and then just simple robe. Simple robe. And third is he only collects his food, what falls in his bowl. So we'll never go and choose like that. He holds this and go to the people's door, and whatever falls in the bowl, he eats that. So we call lung se in Tibetan. Lung means the fall, se means receive. You receive whatever it falls in there. You can't say, no, I can't have gluten. I'm gluten. I can't have this. I can't have this. Can I have some pork, please? You can't do that. You can't go, can I have that? Can I not? No. You just go there at the door of the people, and that only between dawn and midday. Between dawn and midday, that food can be consumed, but even that is only one serve, no second serve. You can't go to the home saying, can I have more? So collection by means of one's own bowl. Yeah, you don't keep more in the bag for tomorrow, keep more bag for in the afternoon. No such thing, not allowed. So we have to totally renounce the contentment by eating, collecting food, what people gives you in one's own bowl. And also when he goes to, the fourth one is when he go to beg food, he cannot skip houses. He says, so he's going to the street, he goes the first door, he got to go there. He can't say, that house gives me more, I'm going to go over there. So he can't skip houses. He can't skip. He just go whatever household comes first. And there's nobody there, next one. But he can't pick and choose. So not skipping benefactors or choosing benefactors. It's very strict, Very strict. If you really look at this, that's a real monastic. And the fifth one is a single meal. Single meal, just one big meal. Just usually that's before midday. Maybe some little things in the morning, but main one big meal. That's it, and that's not so big. Isn't big because you just whatever falls in there. If the morning didn't fall much, then it's still going to be that is single meal. Fifth ascetic practice is a single meal, and then sixth one is everything within the bowl. You can't have a side plate. You can't have a drink bottle. Actually, you're not allowed to have a separate thing. There's all in that. You got to drink it from there. You got to eat from there. That's it. Should be in everything in from that bowl. You can't eat from a nice china, or paper, disposable things. You have to always eat from that very bowl. Have you noticed in Thailand, they observe in Thailand how they try to observe this 13 ascetic practice is practiced, but only by a very small group. They call Thai forest tradition. In the city monastery, they don't do this. They don't do this. Most of them have everything, just like modern homes. So there's not a lot of. So let's not talk about what we don't have now. Let's talk about what actually is monasticism. Because I think there's a lot of idealism. People think that everyone in robes actually are monastic, but actually there are these days almost none. Unfortunately or fortunately, the change of time. And not accepting any extra food after having started to take meal. So you can't have second. You can't have second. So that's just meaning that you're just content. If you didn't have a very successful fall in the morning, you just eat that. You don't think it's too little or too undelicious. You are not allowed to think like this. You just be totally contented, be thankful for whatever, and you don't think, that wasn't enough. I have to get some more. You can't go back. So these are the simplicity, vow of simplicity, and remain in forest. Yeah. Always live in forest and in the bush, far away from hustle, bustle, town and city. At least it should be far away from 1 mile, at least 1 mile from the nearest home. If you are nearer than that, it's not a monastery. Nowadays, monasteries are cities themselves, like 30,000, 4,000 monks. They're university. They're not monastics. Monastics have to be very solitary. You have to be very solitary. So therefore, the monasteries are not monasteries, because there are no monastics. The very setup itself is communal. It couldn't be communal. It has to be from you and him, or has to be at least 1 mile away from. And you only come together for fortnightly prayers or classes there, but otherwise you all go. And you're not meant to have home. You see? You're not only meant to be, and you're not only meant to be in the forest, but you need to stay under trees, if there are trees. If not, maybe a little camping tent will do. You're not allowed to have these big veneer 3-bedroom houses. Oh, that's not monastic home. Tree dwellers in the ancient they call tree dwellers or cave dwellers. That's why caves became permissible, because caves not owned by anybody. Nobody have a title anybody can use, and also it's like a better than tree maybe. Some people probably prefer tree because the cave is so dark and cold. The tree might be quite cool, and I don't know. Anyway, remain beneath a tree. That's the number 9. Remain in the forest and remain beneath the tree. So you're not allowed to have any dwellings. You can't have room number 3, B, and that sort of thing. See, most of the monasteries are not monasteries because they're not living under tree. And to remain on the bare earth without bed. You're not meant to sleep on bed. You need to sleep on bare ground. Maybe you can put there's a little monastic of the 3 ropes, the one square one you put. That's you can use. But otherwise, you're not meant to have any luxurious kind of cushions and leather. It's just monasteries full of leather lounges. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. Very nice woolen carpet. Yes, these are. See, so you need to remain on bare earth without any other apparel, other things, beddings, and also occasionally. Okay, number 11. Occasionally remain in charnel grounds. Yeah, sometimes you go to the cemeteries. Sometimes you just stay there. Stay there nights. You just because you see the dead and dead bodies, and there you should spend more time. That is to teach you to boost your renunciation, that you are inevitably going to die, and you can see many body coming there in the charnel grounds, old body, young body, infant, children, fit, strong, wealthy. All kinds of bodies come there, and that totally informs and reforms the monastic's mind to intensify their renunciation, and therefore, so they shouldn't be going shopping. They shouldn't be going shopping in Times Square, They should go to charnel grounds in New York City. There's a lot of cities, so yeah. And sleep at the allotted spot under the tree. Sleep under the. I know some Theravada monks really. When I went to Rockhampton a couple of years ago, they asked me to stay in this house with the Theravadan monk, and he was really happy to have me there. And then he offered me a room with a bed, because all the houses, just every Australian house got a bed, in the carpet. He gave me a bed, and then I said, I thought there was, where he said it looked like there was only that bed in the house, and it was for me, And I didn't feel really good. I said, Venerable, how about you? He says, no, don't worry, I have. I said, well, you have to. I thought he gave me his bed, And then he showed me his room. There's a bed, but he doesn't sleep on it. He just put his robes and things on it, but he sleeps on the floor, So they're actually following. They're actually following. Good monks follow. They don't sleep on expensive bed, and so he sleeps on the floor. Yeah. And to renounce lying posture, Unless you're sleeping, you're not meant to be lying around and lounging, lounging and lying around. You're always sitting in meditation posture, or maybe walking meditation, or doing things. Otherwise, you shouldn't be just acting so leisurely, lying around, and you're not meant to do that. So these are the 13 ascetic practices. No possessions, and not allowed to own money or touch money, let alone possess money. And of course, gold, silver, and all of that. So you can see that's a monastic. That's a monastic. And a person who lives that life is a monastic. And if you have such people who lived like that, like the Buddha himself did, he attained enlightenment through his asceticism. Not out of masochistic kind of extreme self-asceticism. Even in non-Buddhist Hindu, Indian religion, there are lots of people who do ascetic practices. They do the ascetic practice with the intention to please and serve their god, Brahma, Indra. So the motivation is that. But Buddhist monastics, their purpose of being a monastic is to renounce samsara, to get rid of desire and hatred and ignorance, and therefore to attain nirvana, to attain nirvana, at least from the Theravadan point of view, to attain nirvana. They don't want to be reborn again in this miserable world of incessant suffering, greed and hatred and ignorance, no matter how much you have, that much more it creates problem. And not because you don't have things is a problem, but even you have, the problem doubles. It creates jealousy, it creates competitiveness, it makes you discontented, and you think that things are better, more important than people, and then people fight with people for the sake of things. So therefore, material things are cause of human, sufferings and fightings if one is attached to them. So a monastic renounces. The Shakyamuni Buddha himself practiced total asceticism, but when he first five disciples of his, they became the 5 disciples who adopted his lifestyle. Yeah, in India there was no shortage of practicing this asceticism. If you go to India, the Indian sadhus, they live like this. They don't sleep in homes. They always squat under people's veranda, no matter how hot, cold, wet it is. They are not asking to put inside the house. They just let them allow to squat under the veranda. But usually they will squat under trees because India is so hot. It's much better under trees than in somebody's cowshed. Yeah, and in India even now there's full of thousands of them. You can see they really have this water container and a little stick and a little mat, that's it. And they don't have no intention to accumulate, to possess, to own. And there are heaps of people who practice asceticism. So therefore, it's not the asceticism that is the cause of enlightenment, but motivation why you practice asceticism. So Buddha's disciples, the purpose of asceticism was to renounce these worldly possessions and things in order to gain nirvana, to attain enlightenment, so that one never gets reborn in the vicious cycle of samsara. So the Mahayana Buddhist, now this is Mahayana Buddhists are called a lot. Mahayana Buddhist motivation monastics are same. They have to observe all these things. If these things are not observed, they are not monastic. Even if they have bodhisattva vow, which is very, very highly, revered, altruism. But even you practice altruism, you have to practice these things on top of altruism. Then it's Mahayana altruism. Otherwise, it's just another form of asceticism. So asceticism itself is not really beneficial, because there are lots of people who do ascetic practices. They doesn't necessarily add much value to it. So when Buddha taught, lived these, and then slowly the others came and became his disciples. So he has the 5 mendicants. 5 mendicants became straight away observe these, and they heard the teachings, and they attained the truth. They realize, because if the people do practice asceticism, then they have the opportunity to become mind totally free from the dust of craving. And so they have no dust of craving, then they actually have deep realization and enlightenment. And the 5 mendicants attain arhathood within the first few days. the Kodanya received attainment, arhathood, in the first sermon. He received attainment in arhathood in the first, after hearing Buddha speak first. Because he was so sharp, he got everything. He understood, and he not only observed, and he realized, he meditated. And so that was Kodanya. After these Aswajit and Gavampati, and anyway, so those 5 disciples, all of them attained arhathood, and so they became, wherever Buddha went, they were always followed. So, but when you go to Rajgir or some place where Buddha dwelt, you can see, oh, that's Buddha's cave, that's Shariputra's cave. They don't say, oh, that's Buddha's room, and that's Shariputra's room. They just point to the little dirty little corners, saying that's what Shariputra's cave. There is no fancy buildings like monasteries. These monasteries are like huge compounds. It's just incredible. over the 2.5 millions, how much the monasticism has developed into a fortified, huge castles, and they became like a temple of great wealth and power and grand and so on, and study and knowledge, whatever. But they become more institutions. When monasticism becomes institutionalized, that's where the monasticism dies. And that's what in India, Buddhism didn't last long. When the monasticism became so big, like Nalanda University. They don't call it Nalanda Monastery because it doesn't qualify as a monastery, because it was like 10,000 people living there. When Xuanzang went from China in 7th century to India, there were 10,000 monks. If you go to the ruins today, you can see why there was a big tent. It's a sprawling kind of compounds. So it may be a couple of kilometers away from the villagers, but otherwise it was a huge institution of study and knowledge. So what happened how does monasticism is important for Buddhism is that when you have practitioners who are monastics, they study the Dharma, remain with the trainings, meditation, discipline, and the knowledge. And so the practice of the teachings itself the method of teaching itself become very institutionalized and very, very academic, and therefore outwardly they're all in wearing robes, but very few of them are observing any of this. Any of these things, because these are solitary mendicants' way of life. This is not communal monastics living together. So therefore, these days, monasteries in Asia doesn't observe even half of these rules. Maybe they observe the 5 precepts, 5 precepts, plus maybe maybe they observe celibacy or something like that, not drinking, or because if you kill, if you steal, if you tell lie, these are all legally punishable. You don't have to be Buddhist. So if you rape or whatever, these things, you don't need to Buddhist monastics. Even in society, if you do any of these things, punishable. So what is the big deal about Buddhist precept? Nothing, because these precepts are personal precepts for people. But if you transgress any of these are mainly punishable by society. if all the 5 precepts. So there is really nothing in the 5 precepts. If you don't, even if you observe all of them, ideally most people are observing those 5 precepts or more, because you are observing many, many more rules than the 5 precepts. But these particular 13 ascetics practice are what constitute a monastic. So if you have traditions like in Thai, even in Thai, the Thai forest tradition is very small part of Thai forest. The rest of the Thai are lots of monks, but those monks are, Thai tradition has got an example of people becoming a monk maybe for 3 months, but during that time they observe all of this. Maybe they don't live under trees, because Thailand is a very, very muggy place. It's so hot. You got to have air conditioning. I don't think it happened in the 7th century, 8th century. Maybe they developed only after electricity came. Even then, I think in the 70s, I don't think there was 1970. There was no air conditioning because Thomas Merton, the Christian monk who stayed in a hotel, died of electrocution by trying to put a water bottle, hot water making in it. So there was no reverse cycle air conditioning in 1970s, even in Bangkok. Only later on when all this. I mean, you could imagine in Australia too. Did you have reverse cycle air conditioning in 1970s? No, and then. So monastics actually did practice simplicity and none of these luxuries. Now all of these things has been replaced by comfort, and therefore the number of the Thai forest monks are very, very few. But those number of city monks are thousands. But those who are monks in Thai tradition, they actually observe this by the book, spirit of the book. They don't touch money. They don't own it. They might have home to return to in 3 months' time. They know that. But during that 3 months, they will observe these rules and they live as a monastic. So Thai tradition has actually kept that monasticism at least few months or few weeks in every man's life. I think that was really forward thinking whenever they did this, because it doesn't say in the Pali text they should do this. When they introduced this, they made sure that every Thai person has the benefit of spending that time in a monastic life, and their reverence to the Buddha Dharma is so great, so great, because they when they lived as a monastic, they actually lived by the books, They did not compromise, and they all went on alms. I don't know how the big city monks observe, but some you can see even in Bangkok, you can see some streets, people offering food, monks coming through. So even in the city, that tradition is kept, because monastics don't have money, don't own money, and they actually live some particular sheltered place and do that. But because the whole Thai psyche and culture is embedded in that to support the Dharma that way. Therefore, the outer form of monasticism is always there. But how long an individual remains monastic is usually a couple of months only. And then somebody else comes. There are some who have gone back and reordained because they come to know in their life, and maybe they reach ripe age. They really wanted to spend the rest of time in a Dharma community as a monastic. So that you can see there are a sizable number of them also senior age and contributing that way. So, but the reason why Thai Buddhism is strong, and they're very orthodox, and they're very, very conservative, and they're very strict, is because they're actually observing the monastic ascetic practices, at least on some degree. And it is said that if any individuals observe these 13 ascetics, they say these 13 ascetics are observed only by bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are fully ordained monks. So bhikkhus who live by this 13 asceticism are the ones who are bhikkhus. But bhikkhunis can only observe 8 of them, not all 13 of them, for whatever reasons. For no matter how immaculate bhikkhuni you are, you can only observe 8 of them. Because sometimes they say the bhikkhuni should not be left on their own on an anashram, because the danger maybe for the security. So bhikkhuni has to at least have some company. So therefore they can't always be alone. So bhikkhunis, however ideal bhikkhunis they are, they can only observe the 8 of these asceticisms. And Shramanera, the novice, can observe only 12 of them, 12 of them, or sometimes 10 of them. And female novices can only observe 7 of them. And most devout lay people, if they're really good practitioners, can observe only 2 of them. So that shows how the 13 ascetic practice of a monastic is very difficult for most people. So you can see the number of people in robes is very small, even in a very Buddhist culture. Maybe 10% may be considered high. 10% could be considered very high, and 90% are never going to be monastics, even if the 10% observe all the 13 asceticism, that will be considered very high level of monasticism. But if you look at them, if you look at any monastics, they are not living like, they are not able to live like this. No, most these days monastics have their own home, they have their own car. Some of them have their own real estate, So and some of them even have some businesses, an incense making business, or whatever. You wouldn't believe. And they're not living in hot forests. They're living in multi-story houses, and because they're not skipping meals, they're having 3 meals. They order food in the menus. They just beg. They always sit on the head of the table. So because of that, how many monastics are there in robes? Wearing robe is only one of the 13. That's only what goes, only form only. Outer form, only wearing robes and shaven head, is the only one of the 13 signs of a monastic. That's the outer form of it. But deep down, they have to practice all these renunciations. So that shows, as the world and time changes, you can see those who are able to live a pure monastic are fewer and fewer. And these days, we are actually talking in the Tibetan monastic community that they have shortage of recruit. They don't get new ones wanting to join the monastery. Even when they send their boys to become monastic, they were not sending the boys to the monastery, not because the boys renounced these 13. No, they want better than their home. Their homes are so poor. Their homes are so poor. At least the monastery offers them free food, education, and some place to live, and good sponsorship, all that happening. So actually, monasteries have now become education boarding schools, but they are not monastics. They're only wearing robes, but they have every intention to maybe get a degree or get a job or whatever. They don't have any intention to renounce any of that. Most Buddhist culture boys sent to the monasteries just to improve their material life, maybe with spiritual life too. But they don't individually have no renunciation. That's why as a bhikkhu cannot be ordained unless you are 20 years of age. But if you look at the monasteries, the majority of the population in the monasteries are only kids. So they don't know what to renounce. They want lollipops. They want ice creams. Some of them never had ice cream, so if they can get one, they really couldn't believe how good it is. I remember tasting the first lollipop in Rajpur in the 1970s. I couldn't believe, where do they bring these things from? And where do we get the money to buy them? So the guy, when he comes to the gate of the monastery, he makes this noise, like those rickshawala, boom, boom. He says, I'm here, bring all of it. But most monks don't know what to do because they haven't got the money. Even to get one lollipop, they have no money. So, because we are firstly refugee, secondly, we have no renunciation. We have wish to get more. We haven't renounced anything. We had nothing to renounce. So it's the other way around. So most of the people who are monastic, are they monastic by accident? That also by robe only. Only putting on robe, they're monastic. Otherwise, they internally, conditionally, they have no understanding what it is all about. Parents send them not because parents want them boy to become a monk. They couldn't feed them. They couldn't educate them. They couldn't clothe them. So they sent to the monastery. So monastery became like a boarding school. It still is, where they get free food and lodging, education. And nowadays, now realize, even the monks who become geishas, who get high degrees of academic knowledge in the Buddha, but their education is still not recognized anywhere else. So now the monasteries are trying to modernize, so the young boys who are studying there, they actually have secondary education that is recognized by the Central Board of Education. If not, they can't do any follow-up degrees. They don't have any of the facilities that a student have. So the point of today's talk is not so much talking about the lack of monasticism, that's a problem, but without monasticism, how could Buddhism survive? The Thai model is a very good one, because that makes sure that every man in Thai culture gets to do the monastic life at least a couple of months or a couple of weeks at least. Even Thai princes have to do a couple of weeks, maybe not months. But majority of them, at least 3 months, they have life to live, and they all feel very fortunate. And they all feel blessed, not only then, but thereafter. And their own reverence to the other monastics, to the Dharma, and generosity to support the Sangha, and that culture is so strong. So you can see the strength of Buddhism, at least in the cultural context of Thai, is mainly sustained by at least the form of the monastics. Whether the individuals, monastics, individuals are able to live, even 2 of these would be considered very good. Even 2 of these would be considered very good, on top of the minor list of things that they take vows like 227 or number might be high, but actual monastic, this ascetic practice is much harder than any of the others. So when we talk about coming to Buddhism starting to spread in the new frontiers, like in the West, the question is, how does Buddhism develop or benefit without pure monasticism? Of course, in the West, what you see now, if you look at some of the very key great teachers in the West, in English-speaking world, Thai, whether they are Theravadins or whatever, most of those teachers were monks, but they're not monks. They are professors. They are psychotherapists. They are counselors. They've all been monks for maybe 5 years, 10 years, but they have no intention to remain as a monk. But all of them are now, maybe some of them may have university professorship. All the teachers, men teachers in the Western academic institutions are laymen. There's not a single monk who holds such position, because the monks have no piece of paper that is recognized by any education, because they never went to actual formal places. So that shows the most of the teachers, prominent teachers, even say in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, is not very strong in the Vinaya anyway. So I must say that, because we have our own form of Buddhism, but its main emphasis of altruism is more important than your abstinence of all these things. So abstinence of selfishness is better than any of this asceticism. This is the Mahayana kind of model, that even if you abandon food, or even if you sleep only on floors, so what, So what, But if you don't give up selfishness, even these giving ups is no giving ups. So Mahayana teachings would emphasize the renunciation of self-centeredness and selfishness and idea of grasping to self. So you can see that is a different brand of monasticism. But it is not kind of monasticism that Christian or Buddhist teaching actually says you should. But if you really are living, but this is internal practice. This is not outer form of monasticism by shaving or wearing a robe. This is shaving the real selfish beard. Shaving the beard of selfishness, shaving the long hair, dreadlock of grasping to me. And that is something only you can watch. Nobody can. You can't say, I'm monastic. You shouldn't say, I'm monastic. You should be anonymously practice to serve others. To serve others. Serving others is more important than yourself being ascetic. So Mahayana teachings definitely had this strong connotation. So therefore people must understand that while Tibetan Buddhism, maybe also in other Buddhists, I don't know, I'm not able to say very much. In Tibetan Buddhism, this asceticism practice has never been big. Like say, eating between dawn and noon, and not after midday. You don't even hear about it. They don't even tell you can't have afternoon meal. You just have a decent meal now, don't have enough. They never say that. Sometimes they do rainy season retreat. They might do a little bit for 45 days, what we call yarne, then they become very serious. Oh, then they remember they are monastics. Only in July they are monastics. Because it's rainy season, and then all of a sudden they will start to do not eat after midday, and also wear the 3 Dharma robes properly and not lying down and not doing casually, and they become very, very serious. The rest of the rest of the 10.5 months, they're just only in robes, but otherwise they're just like you and me, Almost. Maybe they don't have wife or husband or like that, but that's about it, really. Celibacy is not itself is not one of the 13 asceticism. Celibacy is not mentioned as one of the 13 asceticism. By the virtue of living like this, you will be celibate anyway, because you don't want to be with anybody. You can probably make love with trees, if you wanted to, because. because you're meant to be living alone and under trees, and you're not meant to live with anybody, either different opposite gender or even of the same gender. You're not meant to live together. So where's the monasticism? According to practicing the 13 asceticism, and kneel. And that's why in Tibetan Buddhism tradition they say this era, what we have, is form only monastics, only in robes. But deep down, those who are able to live by the books are almost impossible. But having said that, there are a small number of individuals who have really left to the caves. Yeah, we have that, These people are not necessarily monastic. They may even be laymen, They didn't even had time to shave. But went straight to the cave, and they live a bag of tsampa, maybe some tea and a few things, but otherwise and that is also provided by their friends regularly, and they don't even go house to house to beg alms, because if you did that, it's time consuming. So because of that, there are lots of people do tsensam, because tsensam means life retreat. Some people do 5-year retreat, 3-year retreat. Others had not enough after doing 5 years. They do my life retreat. They just vow not to come out, and they seal the door with the walls. Have a little hole through that the food comes in, and so we have such practitioners. But some of them are not even monastic. They just grown-up men or women who have changed their life from decadence or worldly life to really a renunciation. So we have those practitioners. Those are the practitioners that actually are holding Buddhism, not the academics. Not those who thousands of them study and debate and all of these things. So number of the I would say the those in boarding schools, they study and they live there, are still supporting one way or another the knowledge and transmission and lineage. But actually, their individual lives is nothing like a monastic. It's just like a community of many thousands of men who are all supporting the study and propagation of teaching, but they themselves are not even able to spend a day or a week in retreat. They're just too restless. They can't sit still. They can't meditate because they don't have the discipline, But the monastics or ascetics practice asceticism by doing meditation. Then they're free to meditate, and then they're able to actually shed off the karma and afflictions and wrong views through asceticism. Why asceticism and monasticism is very important in Buddhism is because if there are nobody who practices that, then there will be very few who realize the teachings. And then it will be merely academic, maybe superficial, merely just culture. Most Buddhist things are cultural things. People doing cultural things, outwardly displaying things, doing things, ceremonies. They are good, but deep down we need to find few among those who actually disappears in the bush and the caves and do time. We have them. Thankfully we have them. We have tradition of people sponsoring them. If they want to go retreat, and the community, even one or two, you just open one mouth and then they will support. It wouldn't cost much to feed one person anyway, so it's very inexpensive. But we need people who actually wanted to practice ascetic simplicity and live like the Buddha. Buddha actually did the hard labor. People celebrate his enlightenment, but we should one day celebrate his asceticism. What he did under the tree before he got enlightenment. The enlightenment itself is the graduation. But that you wear this little hat and little gown and you walk in high heel and put a tie. The graduation day you can see people, but they don't remember how they spent 4 years doing that degree. How early morning, late night, do jobs, whatever. How hard, backbreaking job that it is. People are doing that nowadays to gain just a degree. But asceticism, practicing, I want to conclude here by saying, if a person lived by these 13 practice asceticism, nevertheless, they said, these dutangas, Pali they call dutangas. Dutanga means asceticism. Even if they observe these 13 dutangas, but they have to have these emotional qualities. They have to have faith in the Buddha. They have to have confidence in the Dharma, And that's why they practice. They need to put an end to the sorrow and the cause of sorrow. And the Dharma is the only medicine. And Buddha is the enlightened one who has experienced that, who has taught that. So therefore one's faith in the Buddha and confidence in one's practice must be there. And they should be afraid or ashamed if they transgress any of these ascetic practices. So therefore they must be someone who not only live by this, and they are governing these precepts so much so as if they will bring shame on themselves and their devotees or their compatriots or their fellow practitioners. And they should always be calm and concentrated on their practice and meditation. They should not mind others, their doings or whatever it is. Indifference towards notoriety, renown, consideration, of others' attitude towards you. You don't care what people think of you. You don't need respect. You do not devotion. You're not seeking followers. So even if a monastic is practicing all these 13, but he thinks he should be recognized. He should be. I'm the senior than you. I'm much more senior than you. When did you get ordained? You know, some people when they mix with monastics, they talk. When did you get ordained? And they start saying, "Oh, you shouldn't sit there because you ordained only in '85. I was ordained in '83." People get really this kind of small things become very. So this practitioner doesn't mind where he sits. He doesn't mind who is sitting before ahead of him. So he no concern and he is completely contented with the nectar-like truth of Dharma. He's completely contented with Dharma. He's not seeking respect. He's not seeking recognition, a compliment from others. He's totally content with the Dharma. He's totally content with Dharma, and he's very straightforward. He's naturally calm and wholesome, and as a result of that, he will never criticize anybody, even if others do. He does not believe in that kind of activities, and it is not. Even if there is others' fault, he will see them with compassion. He will see them as his object, his meditation and prayer, not someone to criticize, to blame, to put down. He will not get into that. And constantly he's benevolent. So even if he have all the outer behaviors, but he still have these internal qualities, But people who are in artificial kind of monastic, they think they are this, they are thing, and then they look up or look down on others and competitive to others, jealousy to others. That's not monastic. That's only materialism. That's spiritual materialism. Spiritual materialism. So one has to be completely with that, and also. One who is able to mind his mind and subdue his cravings, and he's not trying to draw a kindness, a generosity of other people. He doesn't solicit things from other people, because he doesn't. If he does solicit food, that's just food, So if her house happened to be the first one on the corner, he will show up there, but he will not. He's not allowed to knock the door. He will allowed to knock the door. He's allowed to just ring a little. Usually they carry a little tassel, little bell, and they have to make that 3 times. If after that doing that 3 times nobody comes, then he must move to the next door. He can't keep pressing the doorbell. And being impatient. So and he has no desire to have disciples. He's not seeking disciples. He don't want to be worshipped by people. He want to remain completely anonymously unimportant. And so he doesn't seek status, recognition, and all of that. Now, if you have 1 or 2 Sangha member who practice like, they become almost like Buddha in flesh, They become Buddha. That's why Sangha is so revered, because we actually like to see this practice happen. And in a collective virtue of Buddhist communities, you could see there may be 1 or 2, not only ascetic like this, but someone who are arhats. And they are, we shouldn't think there aren't. So don't mistake me by hearing me saying that thousands of monks is not a monastic. But among those, there are a few amazing practitioners. So majority might be like a boarding school. They might even have a soccer game. That's just like any young man. They may do all of that. But among them, they slowly produce the real holder of the banner of the Dharma, So we must not be, I would say, be distressed by lack of true ascetics. There are, practitioners who may not be living exactly the 13, giving up these 13 things, but they are giving up selfishness. They're totally doing it in their total devotion to Buddha Dharma and doing the discipline and meditation and practices. Because Buddhism without some individuals who are carrying the culture of Buddha or behavior of the Buddha, teachings of the Buddha, of course will not. Otherwise, there's all the Western academic universities. There's academic Buddhism, academic, totally intellectual Buddhism. Some of them don't even believe in the teaching. That's job. Yeah. I've met some academics, who have PhD, who actually teach. They actually don't believe in the teaching. They just do it because it's a knowledge, because they have to be critical, As a Buddhism doesn't teach critical thinking, Of course it teaches critical thinking, but useful critical thinking, Useful critical thinking, not that critical for the sake of being critical, So most of them are academic Buddhists. Now there we have huge academic intellectualists. Intellectual Buddhism is not monasticism. It's just kind of an intellectual knowledge. So that is actually number of the monastics in monasteries also filled with intellectual Buddhists. They themselves, they are very, very good in jargons and philosophies and talking, but when it comes to living under a tree, even one night, they wouldn't survive. Wait until they do the nyungne, the fasting, at least start doing some nyungne. Even then, they say, this is not for me. They say, I got blood pressure. And yes, you have no idea how many types of blood pressure you have to reduce with the practice. They think this kind of practice will be hindrance to their spiritual progress and well-being. So they're not free to do any of the practices, you see. They have to have the air conditioning on. They have to have remote control over here. They have to have blankets wrapped here, hot water there, cold water here. All this around, pressing this button to bring the attendant from this and that. All kind. This demanding sanghas. Demanding old monks, yes, who want to be his attendant. Very few. Yeah, very few find any attendant. But in the monastery they have, because all those boys they got bad. They better do it, otherwise they won't have a place. So in the monasteries you have no shortage of finding your choice of attendant. You can basically, But yeah, so Buddhism without practice of the Buddha's way of life will be merely academic and intellectualist. And so what we are talking about is we should be very optimistic that among the thousands, among the hundreds, there's always several amazing practitioners who are holding the torch of Dharma and hold the Dharma. So you don't, because we are not talking about army. It's not a war. If the war, you need many arms. We need only one. The Buddha is so rare, and one Buddha is enough. You don't need another Buddha. You don't need another Buddha. And even there's no one. There's still those who have discovered refuge in the Dharma. They will always bring that joy and solace because they remember the Buddha and the Dharma and Sangha. Of course, conventional Sanghas are not ultimate Sanghas. Ultimate Sanghas are Arhats and Bodhisattvas. You have to be very excelled to practice to reach Arhathood. So ordinary Sangha fellow members, you don't idolize the ordinary monastics as being perfect Sanghas. There's a lot of that idealism going on in this world, that people should be perfect. They should be observing all this 13 asceticism. And if not, then they're not monastic. If you treat like that, you'd be idealist, you'd be perfectionist, and you wouldn't be, even when the Buddha was around, there were lots of people complaining to the Buddha. Even Buddha was wearing robes. And he had eyes and nose, and he has opinions. When they say when you get to know somebody, then they are not also Buddha. You start seeing some things. So it's very important that among the hundreds there will be always one or two through this churning the milk of Dharma. You'll always find butter, and so Buddhism definitely depends on individuals, whether in robes or not. In robes would help. Most people who tend to worship robes. If there are people in no robes, they say, "Oh, what is he? At least he's wearing robes, so they feel good." Usually when I travel around and I would go in lay clothes, and they say, "Rinpoche, where's your robe?" They're not impressed. I said, this my robe this is not robe. This is just Tibetan clothing. This is not robe of a monastic. So people tend to really worship the form, form. Taksam Zimpe Tempa in Tibetan called the teaching is only people worshiping in the form, and they don't know the substance. If you don't really know the Dharma, then there is no Buddhism. If there is the Dharma, then the Buddha's teaching, however few the ordained sanghas are, they say where there is Buddha Dharma, there should have at least 4 members of the sangha: fully ordained monk, fully ordained nun, and a layman and laywoman. If there is all these 4 members of community, just 4 or more working harmonious together, then there is sangha. There is Dharma, because Dharma needs to be, lay people are providers and devotees, and bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are preceptors, are the teachings. So therefore, if there is all of these 4, there are actually conventional sangha is there. But the real sangha is your own helpfulness to yourself, and not totally relying and depending on someone else's virtuousness. So that we ourselves become self-dependent, I suppose, dependent on our own inner faith and devotion, like the ascetic practitioners, and not seeking someone to save you, not seeking always someone to inspire you and think he can save you, because they don't. Even Buddha didn't save anybody. So why we try to do impossible thing? Even Buddha said, "I never save anybody." So he says, you got to do your own. So you got to find the wisdom. Is the Buddhism without wisdom? Definitely is a problem. But Buddhism without monasticism is not a real problem, because monasticism is a form of culture. But if people can still practice the wisdom, gain the wisdom, but the wisdom doesn't come from just thinking of it. You have to study it, and monastic institutions are therefore necessary, because there the teachings and trainings are provided. So therefore, the strength and stability of monastic institutions are from where the wisdom teaching comes, where the meditation teaching comes, where individuals learn to develop the disciplines of whatever they tailor to their own capacity. So it's not so much about Buddhism can survive without monasticism, but Buddhism does depend on monasticism and its teachings and practices. But ideal form of monastic, observing these 13 ascetic practices, are very few. The fewness of the ascetic practitioners actually justifies why Dharma is so rare. Practitioners are even rarer, and those who are ascetics are of course much rarer. Therefore we should practice even more strenuously by ourselves, knowing that the flame of the Dharma hasn't extinguished. The flame of Dharma is still burning. So therefore we should see the rarity of the disciples, even during Buddha's time. Even during Buddha's time, there were a number of the disciples, practitioners, who was not able to carry out this. And then some monastics complained to Buddha, he did this, he did this, he did this. And then Buddha said, oh, that did he? Oh, from here on, nobody should do that. And then that's how 227 list of thou shalt not increased. Because before, Buddha did not even say you can't do this, can't do this. No, he did. Somebody complains, and then he can't do this, you can't do this. Otherwise, Buddha wasn't imposing any of these rules. It was all about self-discipline. And slowly someone complains, then the list increased. They say if Buddha lived 200 years, the list would be thousands. So there's a, because every list of the thou shalt not has a history in the Vinaya. Vinaya got 13 volumes, 13 volumes. Actual list of things you observe are maybe in one small book. But his story, it's like the government resolutions, Australian resolutions. Laws are passed because something happens. And then people try to make a law so that people don't do this. It's just like that. It's quite interesting. Vinaya is like how things become law, because Sangha community complained and then brought into Buddha's attention, and one of the rule was that the Buddha himself ordained. He didn't do any ceremony. He said, "Come here," and then as soon as he invited them to come, and they become his disciple. There was no ceremony. He just said, "Come." Before there was no ceremony. Later on, then they create ceremonies to shave and to give names and robes and so on. Otherwise, it was very simple, and so even when even particular list of the vows were increased on the demands of the society, at the demand of society in various situations, and so people will mainly try to make it livable in a community by having individuals, and later on, of course, then it became institutionalized and systematized, and therefore it became very, very structured and maybe even a little bit hierarchical. Not so hierarchical, but they're a little bit more hierarchical because it becomes so structured and standardized, and then there's a system, and you've got to look after the system. You've got to make sure who look after the system is observed, and so on. And so therefore the individual practitioners who lived the life of a monastic in the forest, who will complain what he's doing? He's no one to complain to, no one to receive help from. He's always on his own. He's minding his own, and therefore it's usually what they call recluse. Monastic is a reclusive person, is not a social person. Not a social person, definitely not a social person. So therefore, gone are the days of reclusive individuals. You have to go looking out for them. You couldn't find him same place. Like Milarepa never stayed same place. People go looking for it. They couldn't find him. He never will come to the town to find you. You go to find him. You can't find him because he's often he's constantly on the move, And most monastics were like that. And these are the practitioners who reach enlightenment. And there are in Burma, in Thailand, in Tibetan culture, I'm sure in all the Himalayan culture, you have many practitioners in the caves. And many of them really, really special because they have no worldly interest in materialism. They really are practicing these are even better because none of these 13 asceticism talk anything about selfishness. I mean, governing selfishness is probably much harder than any of these things. Quite a lot of the Mahayana disciples, Vajrayana or whatever practitioners, they all, for them, the selfishness is the most dangerous thing they should renounce. Renunciation, selfishness is not listed among the 13 ascetic practices because this is Theravada and Vinaya. But Mahayana teaching, I would say, boosted these practices with the need to have the right motivation of altruism. Altruism is on top of all of this, it doesn't mean contradict all of these things, but if you practice all of these, or even few of these, with the renunciation of self-importance, which is quite implied by not seeking any renown or respect or from others, these things are very, very important, because when you slowly grow in ascetic practices, then you realize mere abstinence of this or that is not a monastic, but the real abstinence is self-importance. And philosophically, you hear about the emptiness of self and emptiness of everything, and you not only hear them, but you actually try to realize them, and therefore then withstand all the things which usually we do not know how to tolerate. We can now see there's nothing to tolerate too. It's empty of true existence. Empty of you, that would be best. But but when you're not so empty, then the problems are there. And so you have to realize, you have to renounce, self. If you have self-importance, then it still continue to become a hazard. So until you have the altruism for the benefit of others, you can see even abstinence of any of these things still mean a form of ascetic practice, but does not necessarily mean awakening. Because Buddhism is for awakening. Asceticism in India was to please the God. In Buddhism, there's no God to please. We're not trying to please the Buddha. So we're not trying to please others, If people rejoice, that's good, but that isn't the purpose. So people die in the name of God, people immolate themselves in fire in the name of God, whatever. These things are masochistic practices. Masochistic practices and the Buddhist monastics practice of asceticism is two totally different things. There's lots of people do like suicide bombing, They think it's holy. They think it's holy reason. They think it's holy war. Can you believe the word holy is put before war? Holy war. War should be made illegal, full stop. Let alone make them holy ones. But some spiritual tradition, they think in the name of God, you can die, you can kill, and you can go war. And they think that's good. See, spiritual practice could be quite slanted and hijacked by the wrong doctrine. Same could be asceticism. That's why Buddha himself followed the middle way. So not to go in too extreme in asceticism, not too much self-indulgence. So coming to the middle way so that you do not become extreme leftist or rightist, but try to come a middle way. So the middle way doctrine of Buddhism is actually about how not this kind of ascetic practices does not become puritanical thing that I'm so pure, I'm so devout, look at me, I don't need this, I don't eat this, I don't touch this, I don't need. If people become like that, that becomes more like a cause of self-aggrandizement, which is completely defeat the purpose of enlightenment. Enlightenment is about becoming selflessness and become servant to the world and practice with kindness and compassion. So that's all we have. I've got to say, and maybe because of time, please feel free to throw a few comments or questions if you have before we conclude. There's a question in the chat. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Is there a difference between monasticism and being a Buddhist mendicant? No. I think if a person is a monastic, a mendicant could be not necessarily someone who have taken the monastic vows. But even those people who have taken all of these vows, but they're not observing any of that, so the taking vow itself becomes ceremony only. Some people are like Milarepa. Milarepa went to the caves. He was living almost even more stricter than this, And some people said, complain to him. They say, you are not a monastic. You have never been ordained. He says, I don't even have any time to go through the ceremonies as long as I can damn control my mind. He says, I don't know what you're talking about, Dulwa or Dalwa. If I can tame my mind, that's real Vinaya. So, because he never actually went through ceremony, but he actually did the real thing that most people are talking about. So if you're a mendicant without going through ceremony, you can still be a mendicant, a good hermit, practitioner. Are monastics supposed to study, or did monastic studies in monasteries and nunneries develop after the life of Buddha as a result of not having a living Buddha? Yeah, of course, the monasticism, like when they first monastic community was started in the bamboo grove in near Rajgir. It's called Venuvana. It's called. The actual name is Venu. Venu means bamboo. Vana means grove or forest of groves, and people were living in the bamboo grove. There was no buildings. So that was the first one. But the number of disciples increased, They increased. And then the Anathapindika from Shravasti came, and when he saw this amazing Buddha, every time he see a monastic, he was so inspired by their manner, by the humility, by the simplicity, and whatever. And he thought everyone was a Buddha. But until he met the Buddha, everyone was. But when he met the Buddha, he couldn't believe that there was even more Buddha than everyone, because everybody was living such a pure, solitary life of a mendicant. And then he said he didn't want them to suffer like this because they were living in the bush, He said, could you please come to my city, Shravasti, which is northwest India and North India, and there I will provide. Provide means he will build a monastery. So then Buddha promised that he will do, and then when the Anathapindika went back to Shravasti, and then he wanted to create a monastic community, and then he bought a big land from the prince of Jetha, his beautiful prince land, and the prince would refuse to sell it, And he said, you don't have enough money to buy this. And the wealthy Anathapindika said, look, whatever you ask, I'll pay. And he says, if you can lay the whole compound with golden coins, not a single area living gap, then I'll sell that in exchange of your golden coins. And then Anathapindika poured all of his wealth and covered with golden coins. And the Prince Jetha couldn't believe his eyes that this man has this much wealth. And this man was so generous. And then it exactly happened. And then the king took all the golden coins and then gave him the park. And so Anathapindika created a monastic community. And then Shariputra went first for a few years. Buddha didn't go straight away. Shariputra went to observe, create the buildings and all. And then finally, all the Shravasti became the place, the monastics. So monastic communities, studies and so on, only started after the number of ascetics doubled and tripled, increased so much, and they need a place to live and so on. So hence you can see some of the monastic rules saying that when you are in a room, you should close the door. If you're in a room, they say never leave the door open. And why? Because there was a complaint about someone walking into someone's room, something untoward happened. So that shows that they were no longer living in the bush. So then they're complaining, he came to my room or whatever it is. And so the rules were added because that you shouldn't go in, you shouldn't lie in a bed or sleep without closing the door. You should always shut the door, So that shows that they no longer were living under the trees. They're actually living in the monastic community chambers built by Anathapindika. So things actually changed dramatically. So the monasteries and nunneries definitely developed after the Buddha, and Even the Buddha's auntie, she had 500. Prajapati Gautami, she had 500 Shakya ladies. They were all following her. They all bent to become ordained. And they were all together. So the community grew in such a number. And then they have to create monastic studies or communities after the Buddha. Of course, and that's why later on, among the Theravadins, there are two types of Theravadins. The solitary realized Theravadin. They just can't stand the community. They can't live in communal living. So they become solitary realizers. So they actually go and live by themselves. But still, every fortnight, they must meet together to do fortnightly confession. If they don't participate, then that's another transgression. So the monastic tradition and community came as a result of after Buddha's teaching, and so that's why even after Buddha passed away, remember, the 13 Nikaya schools, breakup of Buddhism into 18 groups, were all result of how many want to observe which rule, how many don't want to observe which rule. So some people said these rules are true idealists. Nobody can observe this. So some people made amendment changes and they disagreed. So then all the people divided into 18 schools because after Buddha passed away, everybody have their own ideas how the practice should be resolved or kept. And so the Vinaya school, it was mainly not a philosophical school so much, but mainly was a behavior school. School of behavior said, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, we should do this. So the 18 Nikaya school came as a result of not everybody agreeing how the monastics should live or feed or serve or help or educate each other. So that's why 18 Nikaya school, from that came Theravada Mahayana, are the two remaining schools. Two remaining schools are the Theravada and Mahayana. Within Theravada, maybe there's some sub-schools in Thai or Burma, but you can see the Thai forest traditions don't see the others as a monastic at all. Because they are the real ones. They are the real ones. They actually live in the forest. The others live in the golden pagodas, golden temples. And so you can see why they are. Even in Tibetan Buddhism, you can see, if I can say this, the layman, in the 9th century, Tibetan king allowed lay people, ordained lay people who have the Pratimoksha laymen and Bodhisattva and Pratimoksha, Vajrayana vows, but they are equal upholders of the Dharma, and they can remain as householder, but full-time practitioners and study and train and raise others into Dharma. So the Nyingma tradition, and also somewhat in some other tradition, there's a huge favoring that, because that doesn't exclude only to few who can live a very strict life. Even those who think they are very strict, they're not strict to follow any of these. Maybe 2 or 3 of them they observe, but otherwise they still have Pajero jeeps and they have bank account. And so who's observing all of that? They're shaven, they're wearing robes, but that's about it. Otherwise they're eating 3 meals a day. So who's observing any of them? No, even the monastics are not observing, let alone the householders. So, but the system of upholding Dharma in the Nyingma tradition is no weaker. They are just as strong. They're really, really devoted. So therefore, this kind of prejudice exists between the Tibetan schools who are monastic, who are not monastic. But they have no idea. That kind of judgment has no room in Buddhism. It should be your mind. You should mind your practice, not mind of other person's practice anyway, let alone other schools, the tradition, just by name. Otherwise, there's only difference. Otherwise, they all have refuge in the same Buddha and same triple gem, and there should be no discrimination whatsoever. Yeah, so monastic institution definitely developed after needing to train and educate and create a community, and the system of educating them and supporting one another. So in the Tibetan community, since we coming into exile, it has done very well. You wouldn't believe how long it took to build those places. Now they are full-fledged institution, very well financed. They don't have to, not a single one of them have to go to beg alms on the street. Not that they want to, but because Tibetan tradition never had that, That nobody beg alms, Some yogis do, Some yogis do, but majority they don't do that because they cannot stand it. Begging is a very difficult job. So no wonder why the people don't want to be beggars. Bhikkhus means beggars. They're beggar, gelong, They are soliciting virtues. Please, not that they don't have virtue. They have humility. Humility is the highest virtue. And if you give me, then I'm making you to do virtue. So that's why he's gelong. He's soliciting you to do virtue. Not that he couldn't feed himself. That's not the problem. But his humility, he's using his humility to make others to do virtue of dana. So the purpose is not he can't feed himself. Purpose is so that others who have learn to give to others. So they're actually indirectly helping others to do virtue. They don't lack virtue because they already made the vow to live in simplicity, and in Christianity they go poverty. We don't call a vow poverty, we call a vow simplicity. It's a vow of simplicity. So that you don't have to have so much. But when you need something, you just ask and you make others to do virtue. So it's a virtue for the lay people to give to the monk, because then the lay people's thing they give becomes meritorious because they're offering it out of devotion to the Buddha, not because he's your brother, not because he's your sister, it's because his devotion to the Dharma, and therefore to a practitioner you offer that. So it's more like an indirect way of making others virtuous, not that he himself is needing to cultivate virtue like that. He himself, his vow is simplicity. If you don't give, that doesn't matter. He will move on. But if you give, then you are making connection with Dharma, Buddha. You're making connection with Buddha, and therefore it's more meritorious. If he doesn't do that, so begging is a very hard job, So monastics are begging the alms out of humility, to humiliate the ego, to humiliate the ego and self-importance.
Excuse me, may I ask what was the second precept of the 13 precepts?
Second one was to wear the 3 robes. 3 robes. Yeah. Thank you. Now we're going to conclude here, everybody. Let's do the dedication of marriage. Om Badis Mere Me Hava Ganda Deva Benzaga Hom Nez Me Ale Berera Bevrande Ojana Badare Zenade Herenda Mahayana Dije Vade me obi bekans den levas toda maya na dije kareje majuje ne azama tabara de follow ode zamb Ashadege Ode Mere Mede Zelembo Dijida Tebe Edena Yedanza Ed has been Bomeding Freely Vidadi Generation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I'll be here. Thank you. I will also here next week. So I'll see you on Sunday if you're able to join. Thank you.